Welcome to a very special episode of the We Have a Meeting podcast. Today we thought we'd do something a little bit different. No guests, no tips as such, but we thought it would be quite cathartic for me and Jack to look back on our first proper year in business, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just maybe a bit of a therapy session for us both. So I'm joined by my business partner, the infamous Jack Frimston, and I'm, of course, Zach Thompson. And, Jack, where do you want to start?
Well, I think it's quite a good place to start. Some people will just be listening, so we'll just be in their ears, which is a great place to be, I've always said. But for some people, they might be watching on YouTube, or they might be seeing in clips on LinkedIn. And I think a good place to start is it's kind of gone 360. I know that we're away from the office at the moment, and you're sat in the office. We've got the cot behind you and the place where it all started, and I'm working on an IKEA desk that I had nearly split on my girlfriend setting up, and I've only used 3 times because I went into the office pretty much straight away. So I guess talk me through how it feels. Obviously, looking back, I know that you've been doing it over a year. I guess a place like the full circle of what we've achieved in the year, and how you feel looking back on where it started, sat at that desk and just cold calling using Google and a landline number.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Well, before I started off, my partner said to me, we should get a little whiteboard and you should write down some high-level goals for the year. Nothing like mad, but just like, here's where you want to be by the end of the year. And it's funny, we both went back to our hometown for Christmas, and one of my family members asked me how the business was doing, and I was a bit cagey with my answers because I don't want to be some sort of like big, look how great we are. But the honest answer was, we're probably about a year ahead of where I thought I would be. So I wrote down what I wanted to happen in year 1, what I wanted to happen in year 2, and what I wanted to happen in year 3. It feels like year 2, we've just kind of taken it out and merged what I would expect to have happened in year 3 together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Would you feel comfortable? Because I know, but it might be a good reminder, and you don't have to go too much into detail, but some of the things that were on that whiteboard for you personally and professionally.
Yeah, so year 1, I wanted to have 6 employees.
Okay.
Which we obviously...
doubled and a bit more.
Doubled
We'll go grey from it, but yeah, it's good.
2 offices was on there.
Wow.
Which I wanted to happen. There was I never know how to talk about this, but I suppose when we've done our books, it'll be public knowledge anyway, but like the financial target that we wanted to hit, I think we actually doubled.
Okay.
So we almost touched year 2 in year 1. You know what I mean? So then I had the thought of when Ben, our operations director, I'm jumping around a little bit, but when Ben, our operations director, joined, there was like a conversation between the 3 of us of, should we just go all out and just try and get so our financial goal for this year is to break £1 million, which doesn't feel, there's no alarm bells to say that we won't do that just yet, touch wood.
But if you'd said that to me when we went on that first dog walk, where you were trying to convince me in the way that you sell to people by trying to talk me out of not coming to join you and do this full time, and we had that call, and I think the one bit between us is we've always thought we could do it, but there's always been that underlying bit of, fuck, can we do it? Is it possible? Is it achievable? And if we'd just been walking on a dog walk and you said, like, right, okay, in 2 years, this is the goal, I don't know if I would have looked at you and gone, I believe in you, or this guy might be crazy. What's he been smoking over the Christmas period?
Yeah, it's a good point. Sure, I'll tell you what we should probably do then. Let's start from the top. Let's start from the business starting out, because there was about, started in July, you started in January. So there was a bit of, and you were the first hire, and sort of, I suppose, why you were the first hire, and then we can maybe jump into a bit about you. So in terms of the origins of the business, basically what happened was I was working for an events company, as in a physical exhibition. So I was selling like event space and speaking slots and things like that. The pandemic hit, and then they did a sort of a 180 and became like a marketing agency, because obviously there was a marketing component to selling the exhibition. So it was almost like, what are the bits in here that we can sell? So it suited me really well. Like, my whole career has been find everything cold, do the full 360 sales cycle, and it really helped get this kind of problem-centric approach really nailed. Because the honest answer, I'm sure that, well, the company, you wouldn't be able to find them on LinkedIn anyway if I was stabbing them in the back in any way, but the honest answer was there wasn't really anything to sell. You would have to go in and find out what people needed, and obviously the pandemic presented different problems for different people. So then I would have to build something for them based on the marketing capabilities we had as an events company. It was quite a unique situation to be in, and started making them money. Perhaps didn't really get on with the directors that well, which is a bit of a story of my career, if I'm honest with you. I don't really get on well with authority. There's a lot of things in our approach as a business that I thought would work better than what a lot of businesses were doing. And then when it came push to shove, like, again, my partner said to me, maybe you should just do it on your own then. If you think you're so great, why don't you just do it on your own?
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Which is true. And there's a beautiful moment, and I've heard this story, but it'd be great for people that are listening. There was a podcast that you listened to, and I don't know if that gave you the idea. I think, like, you had the idea maybe on a dog walk, but there was a podcast that you listened to that kind of maybe just said, right, here's the kick up the arse that you need. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so there's two moving parts, right? One was, as I was selling the marketing function to people, they were saying to me, I don't really need the marketing bit. We've got loads of leads now from this. I need someone who does what you do. I need like a guy who gets on the phone and wins us business. So then that was happening more and more, and it almost like a bit of a weird sign. Mm-hmm. And I was also listening to, I've got young children, and thought, like, I need to get really good at this, like really good at selling. So I was listening to all these podcasts all the time. One of them was a Benjamin Dennehy guest appearance. I think he was with maybe Mike Winnett and perhaps Daniel Disney as well. And they were basically talking about the pandemic and what that meant for salespeople. And I think the actual theme was like, is it better to be cold calling or social selling? I think it was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Benjamin Dennehy made a point in there of, if you are someone who's working from home during a pandemic, making a business money through cold calling without someone looking over your back and having to manage you, you should probably be doing it for yourself. So that happened. And then in the background in my actual job, people were saying, I need someone to do the selling for us. So it was those two bits that kind of came together and kind of planted the seed. And then we came to a bit of a crossroads with my employer. Mm-hmm. They were moving away from Dorset. We probably weren't really getting on anymore. And I just had a thought of, I was driving home. We kind of agreed that was it. I was driving home from Salisbury to my house, which is probably about an hour. And my partner sent me a picture of our now 2-year-old sat in the garden with the dog playing. And I was like, I need to think of something. I can't just like go from one sales job to another struggling with my managers. What could I do? And then the Benjamin Dennehy podcast and the people saying, you could come and do this for us, we'd pay you, was going round in my head. And both those two things came together. And then that's when I text you.
Yeah. I've had an idea. I'm going to set up meetings for people. It's a bit complex. I was like, you're going to smash it. But, okay, so looking back, put yourself in that situation. You're like, right, okay, you've decided you're going to do it. How confident were you that it was going to work? And was there a moment where you thought, I might be onto something here?
I was confident I could get people to buy into the idea of salespeople are pretty crap, right? Especially in the industries that I've always worked in, like construction and software. Salespeople, traditionally in those roles, are very like relationshipy, which I'm not. So it's very take the client out once a quarter, hope that they spend some money with you, cocaine and strippers, that sort of thing, which I'm not about, right? But I thought I could convince someone that you have crap salespeople and I'd be better at doing it for you. I thought I could do that bit. What was happening was when I'd get people to so I'll go back a step. the first day doing it, 9 calls in, a guy said to me, if you seriously will do that for me, I'll pay you right now. Which probably should have been an alarm bell. But he said it for me. I told him how much it cost, which again, I'd not really I just sort of thought, what was I making before? How do I add a bit more on? So I told him what it would cost and he went, done. I thought, right, okay, this should be probably a bit more money. He paid straight away, he bit my hand off, but then the actual stress in those early days came from the next bit. Because the next bit was, I had no databases, no dialer, I'd sit on my mobile phone with Google in front of me and LinkedIn and just make it happen that way. Really, really old school way of doing it. And the first company that I signed was a company who sell mortgages to housing developers. Now, I don't know if you know anything about housing developers, but they build big estates full of houses. They've got money. So I'll be ringing up, and you might get hold of a financial director who a lot of them would just laugh.
Do you know how much money I've got?
Yeah, one guy actually said to me, do you know how much money we've got in the bank? And it was something ridiculous. It was like, we've got 42 million in the bank. Like, I physically wouldn't, I might run out in like 3 years. Okay,
wow.
Right, okay. And then I'd managed to get them a few meetings and it taught me a few things. But then when it came to carrying on with them, I just decided, actually, this isn't going to work. It's like, it was too stressful to get the meeting out. It was a massive amount of output and sifting around for stuff to get that to work. But I knew that there would be other ones out there that were more, you could put in X amount and get the return and it would be quite predictable.
I think that's what one of the big things that we probably learned is getting clients isn't hard. If you focus and you put the pedal down and you're like, right, we're good at cold B2B, we can do that. Finding clients isn't hard. Finding the right clients and good clients, and we learned early days. Do we want to take on R&D tax? No. Do you know what I mean? People, do you know what I mean? We don't want to talk about PPI or
your
energy
LinkedIn
bills.
DMs are going to be cross at you now, mate.
Yeah, yeah, probably. So that's interesting. Okay, so we're up to, so you took on a few clients. I know that some of the clients you took on in the early days we're still working with. So what do you think was an integral part of that success?
Of keeping those ones happy?
Yeah.
I think it was coming up with, and it's always, I mean, this is a great thing for I think for all salespeople, it's getting the other side to come up with what is predictable and repeatable in terms of success. And you'll find that, I think people don't realise this, but our clients, when you give it back to them, will often be quite realistic. So they were saying, I probably only need 1 meeting a day. If it was a really red hot product or service, it'd be, I might be happy with 2, but I've got a list of people that are kind of warm leads, so you won't struggle too much. So there was kind of a mix. So I think it was really transparent. I think it was delivering meetings where, our sales process very, very basically is we need people who've got a problem that we solve, that a client solves, and then that they're motivated to fix it. The motivated bit is probably the bit most salespeople don't do. So that's the bit around how do you create something where people are going to show up to the meeting, be quite open in terms of admitting I have a problem. Here's all my root causes. Here's how it's impacting my business. Here's the decision makers involved. Here's what needs to happen. Here's where I can go. Getting all that kind of framework in there and delivering those sort of meetings got people getting back to me saying, that was a great meeting, Zach, that was really good. Can you focus on these ones now? And I was still doing it the same way, which is just mobile phone, Google, LinkedIn. And, but yeah, it was just having that open dialogue and getting the other side to come up with what the results were and really challenging like how realistic that is.
Wow.
So getting a buy-in where we're both working together, if that makes sense. Which sounds so obvious.
No, I know it's a partnership rather than I'm just gonna. I feel like if you went in, you were like, I'm gonna sell you the dream, blah blah blah. We're gonna do this. Well, it's fine, and then 1 month in, you're like, well, this isn't what I signed up for. So it's all a little bit. Does it make you laugh? I'm gonna skip forward just for a moment. Now with Ben, who's coming, our ops director, and some of the systems that we put in place, you can sit down on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock. You can press a button. And if you dial non-stop, you'll probably get 300 dials in a day. You'll probably speak to 50 people. and we've got big data sources, so you're speaking to people directly on on their mobile. Does it feel weird a year down the line to say, I'm not just Googling who is in charge of marketing at this company anymore?
It feels weird, and I think some people that we've hired have got no previous sales experience, so they've got no experience of doing it the other way. They just know I come in on a Monday morning, I press a button, does the dialing for me, there's the leads ready to go. It's almost like the thought of, as a parent, am I making life too easy?
Too easy, yeah.
You know, it's that thing which is, and you don't want to sound like an old bastard, do you, by going like, in my day. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it does feel weird. Obviously, it presents it's new problems that come up, isn't it, by doing it that way? But it's great. It's great to know that you can actually create this kind of big sales machine, and you can wear a totally different hat in a different sector every day, and have repeatable results. It's quite a mad thing, really.
And I think one of the best things from what I saw as an outsider before I came in the business for what you did, when you started, it was just you and a mobile phone and getting clients on board, and there was no big. Obviously, you were posting on LinkedIn, and I think that you had some success from clients there as well. But it was purely just like outbound calling. There was no big budget spent on marketing. There was no big budget spent on data. There was no big budget spent on a website. Like, as we've grown, we've invested into Cognism, Dialer System, all of these, a website and things like this. But at the beginning, was there any? I mean, the answer might be obvious that there wasn't that much money to spend. But was there any reason why you decided, I'm just going to bootstrap this? I'm not going to try and get any investment, or I'm not going to put my savings into this on a big fancy website? What was the process behind it?
It's a funny word you used then, wasn't it? Savings.
Sorry.
So I can be candid about it. My own financial position was, I probably had about a month's wage to go at. My previous employer owed me commission, which they did pay, but it was kind of a bit of a weird back and forth for a while. But they did pay. But there was a month's wage in my bank account, no savings. Fourth child on the way, coming in January. So obviously he's nearly a year old now. So it had to work in that first month, because I only had enough to pay my mortgage and my bills and feed my children for that first month. So the honest answer is there just was no other option. I didn't have investment money. I didn't have savings. So it had to work that way. And a big thing, if anyone is looking to start up something on their own, is get people to pay you up front before you start. Regardless of payment terms, construction's a notorious one. When I was working in construction, we've got 60-day payment terms. And my honest answer to people would be, great, I don't. And they'd be like a bit stunted, and I'd say I've got a really fat baby to feed, and I'd show them a picture of Gabriel when he was really chunky, and they'd laugh, and I'd say so, and that's when I'd start the process of like talking them out of it. Like, I'm guessing if you can't go over the 6-day payment, it's probably not that big an issue. So let's kind of leave it there. Well, no, I might be able to. Let me go and have a chat. Okay. And
crazy how quickly people can find a solution to the problem when when pushed for it.
That is the big, how have we managed to hire people at the rate we have, invest in tech. Most of the money we've made in the first year has gone back into the business, and rightfully so, but it's not possible without getting people to pay up front.
Yeah, you hear the story. We both listen to Stephen Bartlett podcasts at times, and that he tells a story about how, like, he's running around on the last day of the month. I need someone to sign this thing, otherwise I'm not going to have 80 grand to pay. And I think one of the biggest things that in 3, 5, 10 years, wherever we go with the business, we'll look back and be like, that was one of the key decisions. Although it might just be a small decision, and it's just like, this is the way we do it. And it's like, I remember coming in and I'd be like, oh, well, this client doesn't want to pay until this point, blah, 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 blah. It was like, it's non-negotiable. These are the terms. This is what we do. And we stuck with it. We stuck to our guns. And it would have presented problems later on down the line. So I think, well, I was also going to ask you, and I don't think I need to ask when there's 1 month's wage in the bank. I was going to say, well, what motivated you to get up and do the graft every morning? But I think that's a little bit of a silly question in hindsight.
Yeah, I've never ever struggled with them. There's obviously like burnout, I think, that comes from, and burnout that you would feel for me, I always feel it in attention span first. I feel like it's a bit harder to concentrate. But motivation's never been an issue. I've got children. That gets me out of bed in the morning. And we could talk about mindset all day, couldn't we? But the mindset of, if I start doing the steps, you never want to make that first cold call. You never want to make those first few calls. But if you just do the steps and you actually don't have that conversation with yourself.
No.
It's just not up for negotiation. It just has to happen. This is my job.
Yeah.
I do it. And then when you start doing it, there's almost like a submission that happens in your brain where that part that's fighting you just goes, oh, right, I suppose you're just going to do it then. And it stops. And then once it becomes a habit, the voice gets quieter and quieter that's trying to talk you out of it. But yeah, motivation, never an issue. First few months, definitely before you joined, there was a lot of waking up at 2 a.m, the client for the next day coming into my head of how I would make it work for that next day, and staring up at the ceiling, and then my alarm going off, and just being like, I've just been staring at the ceiling for hours, like the Queen's Gambit when she can see all the chess pieces.
I do feel like as we've grown as a business, I know from our conversations, I think that little voice is, because you're kind of like, you're striving to get something, but we want to get to this point, and then when you get to that point, you're like, oh, I don't want it to go away, and then it feels like I'm just defending it rather than attacking and defending, and you're kind of in that mix-up. But I think as we've grown, I think that the voice is getting quieter of the worry of okay, there's a bit more evidence, and I know that we're big on this of like, well, actually, nothing's gone wrong in the first year, and even if that did go wrong, we have had mishaps and fuck-ups along the way, well, they're very easily fixed. Nothing, we go back to my favourite catchphrase of remember you'll die, so it's nothing's too big. But I've voice noted you like screaming down the phone, 2-3 minute voice note, what the fuck is going on? And then it's like take a minute, and then you're like, right, you home? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine now. I'm very stoic. I just lost my way for a moment, and then we're back.
Yeah, there's loads of cases of that. Definitely a lot of cases, even when it was just me, of taking on clients and knowing in the first day, shouldn't have taken this one on. got sold a dream. Clients will sell, as we know, will sell as a dream, and that's why it's great to have each other, especially because we know each other so well. It's not like a relationship with you've come in, you don't really know each other. You can come to me and talk to me about a client. I can come to you and talk to me. I've got this client, they're ready to go. Okay, talk to me about it. And then you can say to me, you're being a fucking idiot, mate. That'll never work. Oh, right. Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, and we can talk some sense in. So, fast forward, basically what was happening was I was full Monday to Friday, 5 clients, others in the waiting room, if you will, delivering on those. And there was kind of this feeling of like, oh, this could grow now. And then maybe this is a good point to pass over to you. Where were you in your life that made it so that this was a conversation that could even take place?
It's a good question. So a bit of like brief backstory is, and it's mad to think like running a business now, but previous 2 years when the pandemic hit, so that the pandemic hit, everyone was out running and buying loo roll. I was on the middle of a cruise ship in Miami in the sunshine, and I was basically stuck there for 30 days. I was like, what is happening? The world is shutting down. I was on this cruise ship. I've been working as a singer, and it was mental. Anyway, came back from the cruise ship, and I was like, well, I can't go back to London because there's a pandemic, and I don't really have anyone here or whatnot, so I don't know what to do. Ended up going to Liverpool for a little bit, and I was like, what do I do? I was a singer. I've worked in sales. There's no sales jobs that are really hiring at the moment. Got a job at Amazon for 6 weeks pushing parcels. Not afraid to admit that now. At the time, I was more sheepish. And then one of our other best friends, he said, "Look, I've got a room in Manchester. Why don't you come to Manchester and get a sales job and start again and see what you can build here?" And I was at this point of my life. I think I just turned 28, and I was like, "What am I doing? I don't know. Like I've worked in sales. I've tried the music thing. It's not really worked out. I don't want to go back on the cruise ship. So I'm at a position where I want to settle down and start maturing a little bit." I got a job. I was like, I'm just going to get this job until the pandemic kind of tides over. And I got a job working in insurance sales, and it was working with like commercial fleets and business insurance. So I'm dealing with businesses, but more on fleet side. So selling them like a fleet of 10 insurance, blah, blah, blah. The company was, I won't go into too much detail. It was a safe haven for what I needed at that time. And what I realised was I'd always worked in sales, but this had really given me the opportunity to be like, right, okay, I'm going to try and just work my arse off because there's nothing more I can do in the pandemic. And I started making more commission than I'd ever made in a sales job before. And I was like, oh, all the sales jobs I've worked in previously have kind of like spammed me that, that story that your OTE is going to be 100k a year, you're never going to get it. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I'm just coming out with less than my basic. How's this? Where are you taking that money from?
Yeah.
And then I was like, all of a sudden, I was like coming into a bit of money, and I was like, I like this. I like this a bit more. Like I'm feeling a bit more. I was in a good city, and I was starting to like meet a few new friends and stuff like that, and I liked it. But I was still at that point where I was like, what do I do? What do I want to do? Like, do you know what I mean? There was so much out there. So I was looking, and I remember you saying, why don't you like look into like some of these like creative studios, and you could probably get in like a bit of a business development job. And I was like, I don't know. Now I know the world a bit more, like LinkedIn and things like that. There are so many opportunities out there for people, but it's just knowing where to look in the right places and what to do. And I'd been in the job, the insurance job for 2 years, and I just felt like this is going nowhere, but I don't know what I want to do. And you came to me and you presented this opportunity. You said it might work, it might not work out, who knows. And at the time, I'd also applied for an apprenticeship. Do you remember this? An apprenticeship at the BBC, 20 grand a year basic, and I was going to be like a content creator for the BBC. And you presented it to me, and I said, okay. And I remember speaking to some of our friends about it and said, Zach's asked me to go and join them. Some of the friends were like, well, what happens if it ruins your friendship? Some friends said, but you're not as good at sales as Zach, so you might struggle. I said, that is true. And they said, and they were like, well, how can Zach afford to pay you? Like, he's only just started himself. And they were like, is it going to be just commission based? And how can you afford to pay your rent if it's just commission? What happens if you don't? And you can leave the safety of a job. And then I had this like BBC apprenticeship that was like tittering on the edge. I got through the first few stages and I was like, I don't know. And I remember you saying like, look, I'm going to need to hire. I've got people waiting. Is it something you are thinking about? Should I get in touch with the recruiter? What do you do? I remember doing the dance with you for a while. Like, I like the idea of it. It sounds good. I feel like if we were working together, it'd be great. I'm just not sure. And I think that's good. It wasn't like a fuck yeah, I'm in. There was a bit of that worry, that tension of what if it all goes wrong and I lose one of my best mates? What if it all... Because at the same time, there was like if I come into the business and I take this money and I don't put in, well, I'm not just like taking from a business. I'm taking from my godson's plate. That's the last thing I want to do for your chunky baby. Do you know what I mean? It was one of those things. And then we went on, I came down to see some other friends that live near you, and we went on I said, I'll drive over, and we went on a dog walk. And I remember at that moment, I think I gave you the decision there. And I was like, even if the BBC thing comes in, I'm like 95% on this now. And then I think that the next day, or while I was thinking about, I was texting you like all excited, and I got the email through saying, sorry, you've not been successful. And I didn't feel like an ounce of sadness. There was no disappointment. It was like, I know the path that I'm going on now because I'm ready for this. And I think that we've always been in the present moment of what we're going to deliver and how we're going to do it, but we've also been 10 steps ahead of like, if we do all of this, this is where we're going to get to. And I think for me, the idea of like, right, okay, this could get exciting 6 months to a year down the line when we've got a team and we're managing, because that's I love like mentoring and things like that, and management and stuff like that. And I always wanted to get into it, but I never had the skill set. But then you create your own skill set. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a few bits to unpack there in that story that I think are quite interesting details.
Go on.
I don't know if you've craftily avoided them.
Hit me.
Do you remember what your commitment level was when you started off? We were quite open about it. Do you remember what you had committed?
Yeah.
Go on.
I said, Well, it's quite funny now. I said, I'll give it a year.
Yeah.
I said, I'll give you a year. No matter what happens, I will commit for a year. And even if I hate it, I'll put my heart and soul into it for a year. And then at the end of that year, I might hand in my notice. And I'm glad you've come here today, actually, Zach, because I'm here to tell you that my year is up and I'm free.
and I think a lot of people won't know this as well. You actually didn't start off in any way running anything. You started off as the head of sales. That was the job. You were tasked with a certain thing because of this, like, I'm not that committed yet. I don't know if it's going to work. Mm-hmm. Which obviously in any other employee, if you were interviewing someone, you'd be like, well, I'm all right then. You know what I mean?
I don't want to take...
So there was that bit. And then the conversation that we had was not one of me trying to talk you into anything. It was actually me trying to talk you out of it, which now you know my secret.
I know your style.
But there was a lot of, here's the reality of the job. So what were your expectations before you started, and when you actually started, how did that marry up with the reality?
Well, I'll backtrack just one bit. When I handed in my resignation and I updated my LinkedIn profile, said that I was going to be head of sales at We Have a Meeting, the operations director came up to me and said, it's quite funny, I've just seen that you put head of sales. I was like, yeah. He was like, there's only two of you. What are you the head of? I was just like, okay, I'll prove you wrong. You'll see. So in terms of expectations, I think I knew it was going to be hard. And I've done cold calling in the past, and I knew it was going to be hard. And I don't know what happened. There was a switch. I'd started the 2021 was a real year for self-development, and it was a case of, like, I think I pushed myself harder than I ever did. So in that year I committed, I was like, I'm going to do a marathon. That was like one of the big things I was like, I'm going to do, because I was like, if I can do that, then I can. And it was all kind of threading together. And then I'd be listening to like a motivational speaker that I love, and he'd spent like 2 weeks living with the Buddhists. Now I couldn't get 2 weeks off work, so I went and spent like 3 nights, no phone, just out in the wilderness, just waking up at 5 a.m. living with the Buddhists. And I think that was just like this, I don't want to sound wanky and call it a spiritual awakening, but with all the content we were consuming and reading, I just felt like it's going to work, and I'm so motivated. I knew it was going to be hard, and I knew it was going to be hard, and the first 10 cold calls I did were probably harder than I expected it to be. It was a bit, you're sat there in like a common area. I was at a co-working space, and I was sat there, and I didn't have anyone behind me, and I could have just messaged you at the end of the day saying, oh, I tried it, but it didn't happen, and actually my first day was just getting into it and really understanding it. I'll do it the next day. But there's just that thing of like, I want to do this for myself. I've got my own goals and ambitions, but also there's like that looming, I can't let you down. You're not a big business owner with 10 million in the bank going, right, let's get a pawn to go and do some cold calls for me. It's like, I'm on this with you. We've got to make this work. And I remember just doing it, putting the steps in place. Obviously, we'd done a lot of studying together, a lot of self-work to kind of understand the approach and role plays and getting good. And there was a moment where I think I rang you afterwards, and I was like, it fucking works, doesn't it? It really works. And I think on my first day, I booked 2 meetings, and that was from you'd given me a website and said, these are people that have been to like a marketing event, try and find them, all gatekeeper work, all Google on a mobile, and it started to work. And then I started to have a few meetings, and then I remember it really vividly, like the moment on LinkedIn, I was like, I'm going to commit to LinkedIn as well, and I started posting on LinkedIn, and I commented, and it was like 4 days into working, I'd tagged Benjamin Dennehy, who we're a big fan of and we do stuff with now, and he commented on it saying like, you're putting all the practice into place. And then all of a sudden there was like a flurry of people like, oh, I've just seen what you do, we're looking for something like this as well. And then it was like, so I'm going out, I'm getting all these leads and booking these meetings. I remember at one point being like, I've just got too many meetings. Yeah. And then I know that you work on like the maths of it, of like, right, okay, well, if I book 2 a day in a month, that's 40. Well, I can only work with 5 people. Sooner than later, it was like they were there. I remember I think it must have been maybe a week, and the first client was signed up, and it was like, right, okay, this is really going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a moment I remember when we were doing the initial training of the approach. Like, the approach we use is uniformed. Everyone uses the same approach in the whole company. So often people are like, "Oh, I want you to be on the phone to me and you." Well, you're not going to get someone who's doing the same thing anyway. It doesn't matter if it's. But I remember me telling you the approach and kind of talking you through it, and your feedback was, "I think this would only work for you, for your personality. I don't think I can do it like that." There was that skepticism, and I remember that. I think the morning of your first day, it was you were getting into it. Later on, you were quite honest and said you weren't sure if it was going to work, and there was some doubts there. In the afternoon, I remember my phone flashing. You rang me, and first thing you said was, "Mate, it fucking works." And then we talked about the meeting that you'd booked, and there was another meeting that happened later on, and then you went home. I think you posted something on LinkedIn of you stood outside with your jacket on, saying like about your first day and what had happened and stuff. But I think that's like a real testament to, you'd never done that style before, but you'd done all the self-work before. We'd done loads of role-playing before you started. I'd give you the books to read. You went and read the books, the podcast to listen to. We'd done so much practice that actually it didn't matter that you'd never used that approach before. It just mattered that you were just putting one foot in front of the other. So I just want to jump ahead because I think you've tallied that up quite nicely. So there was a point where you'd booked so many meetings, and we were having an influx of like warm leads coming in, and then I came to Manchester, and it was like the first. So if anyone that doesn't know, I run the office in Bournemouth. Jack runs the office in Manchester, so we're based like 300 miles away from each other. So it's the first time, it's the first time me coming up and us working together, and we both just had an influx of meetings the whole time I was there, as well as clients that we were working on as well. It was like a really busy time just for the two of us, and it felt like we needed to hire in that moment, and the co-working space that you were at didn't have any space for us. So there was a moment of, which we've had a few times, if we've got a bit too many clients. A bit too many clients, is that the right English? We've got too many clients and not enough of us and not enough days available to fulfill them. So do you want to take us through what we did from that point on and how that next bit worked?
Yeah, so it was. I think that the way it's always worked, and the best way I've seen it, and the way that I've said is like, every client's the same. We'll work with you. I think it's best, before we jump into bed and we're in a relationship, let's do 1 day a week. Let's show you. So we'll do 1 day a week for a month. At the end of that month, you should be sitting, depends on your sector, you could have 4, 8, 12, whatever the amount of meetings is. And you would have sat those meetings. You would have a good observation of the quality, the quantity, the relationship here. And then that can kind of like grow, and that's the way it's worked. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do a trial, and then it's like okay, now you know it works, now you're happy, now I'm going to jump into bed with you. And one of the clients, like that first co-working space, it was awful. Like, I don't want to slag it off, but it was just like there was no place to actually like cold call. So there was this little phone booth that I'd lock myself in from 9 till 5, just cold calling. I remember walking up the stairs one day, and these two, like, I've told you this story, and my girlfriend laughs that I got bullied on my when I was going to my new job, and these two lads working up the stairs behind me, and they were like, "Huh, you going into your office, mate?" And I was just like, "I'm gonna show you, you bastards. One day I'll have a real office." So we got to the point. One of our clients went from 1 day a week. They're really happy with the meetings. They said, "Actually, could we get you on this 3 days a week?" And I was like, moved around some clients, and I was like, right, okay. So I had all these other clients in the wing. I was like, but this is a client that's growing and has potential to do something huge. They want to go 3 days a week. Started doing 3 days a week for them. The success continued, and then from there they were like, right, okay, we're at a point where we need to up this. We want you to grow a team, and we were like, right, we need to hire. So that's where it was. So we needed to hire, and we were going to hire one. And that I'm remembering now as I'm talking. No, we got to the point we had too many clients, and we were like, right, we need to hire one. Went through the recruitment process, and we're texting each other throughout it, like, I like this guy. That guy's just done a magic trick. I'm not sure about him. And there was 2 guys that we first interviewed on the screen that came, and we thought they're amazing. Then they came into the office and did a face-to-face interview, and we were at a point where we're like, I love them both, but I guess as a new business, it would have been too much of a risk to hire both. We're like, we can't do this. We need to hire one. One of the lads was going on holiday for a month. We were saying we need someone now, so we gave the job to the person that could start straight away. Next thing you know, one of the clients was like, I want you to grow a team. We want to have you and 2 others on this full time, because if you can teach others and you can bring them in and you can give them your full potential, then I think we're going to be laughing. And we were like, right, let's call the other lad. And he played coy with us for a little bit, didn't he? He was like, yeah, I've got a couple of options. And we brought them both in at the same time, and then we all started working on that client full time.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of a crazy ride, because obviously, without getting too far ahead, we've grown that team of, we'll call it a team of 3 there. I stepped back and then we brought in 3 more, so then we had a team of 5 on that one client, and then my time was just managing them and making sure that we were bringing in them meetings.
Yeah, and I think there's a funny side note here. There was a transition from us ringing on our mobile phones, having to stop when we hired people. There was some infrastructure that had to come in. But what was the first bit of money you had to ask for from the business, and how did that conversation go?
It was maybe in that little phone booth where I got mocked by the recruiters outside the phone booth. The signal was awful, so I'd be ringing. I'd be on loudspeaker with my phone. I'd be like, "Hello, it's a sales call. Can you hear me? Sales call, cold call. I'm trying to sell you something. Can you hear me?" And the signal was bad, and it was just like, and it was just like, it wasn't a system. So I was like, right, okay. I look into it, and I did a bit of research, and I found that there was a dialer that you could get for £32.50 a month. So what you do is you type the number in, you'd use a headset. I didn't mind buying my own headset. No, in fact, I was using my headphones. So I was using my headphones. I thought £32.50, and I remember saying, like sheepishly, "Is there any chance that we could invest £32.50 a month to buy a dialer?" And what I can't remember your response, but at the time I think it was like, "I'm not sure if we can afford it."
No, I think we could. The first month we could just afford to pay each other, but it was based on that first set of clients that all paid up front. So it was I think there wasn't many months in it, and then I was just thinking, oh no, I'd not budgeted for that, which is silly when you think about it now. What was I going to do? Expect everyone to just ring on the mobile phones on loudspeaker in the booth, and also the office space, the co. Anyway, but yeah, it was funny. So we brought Sam and Yaya in. We're allowed to say names. Do we have to cut it out?
We can say their names. Yeah, okay. It worked for us.
So Yaya was probably one of the most original interviews that we'd ever seen. I tell loads of people this story, but he actually rapped in his interview. I was talking about, there was basically, the way it worked was like a recruitment day. There was other companies involved who were all talking about what they can offer someone. And it was stuff like, if you hit target, you can go on holiday. We do this in the office, this incentive, this thing happens. And the first thing I said was, I can't offer you any of that. I might be able to stretch to beer and pizza if you're good. And Yaya was on mute going like that in the background. And then he did a rap, and he just came across as someone that was charismatic and confident enough to basically learn something and just like try it out. If he's going to rap in front of a room full of strangers, he's not going to bother about telling someone it's a cold call, is he?
Yeah. 1,000,000%.
So he was, and then we had Sam, who was more of like a nurturing, which is a big thing that we talk about, is how sales calls should feel a bit like therapy, and Sam just had that down to a T. Had this ability to just really ask questions and seem genuinely interested in them. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. I was going to say that while you sort your dog out, there was a moment with with Sam, and we laugh about it now. But when he came into the interview, he like sat down and was like, "Can I get you anything? Is there anything I can do for you?" Like pulling my chair out. He was just one of the most like genuine. Everyone that meets Sam turns around and says, "You're one of the nice guys." Sam's like one of the nicest people, and I think they were such a chalk and cheese of people, such a yin and yang. But honestly, those early days where we moved office, we got our own little space. We were in a 2-person office, all 3 of us crammed in, and they both had their own desk, and I was just on the end hunched. And those early days of the 3 of us, just like, right, we need to go to town, we need to smash this. And they were both booking meetings. I think Yaya booked on his first day, and Sam was a bit like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." Sam then booked on his second day, and then I think recently the one that Sam booked on his second day has now gone through as like a £1,000 deal. So it's just like it does work.
£1,000 deal.
I didn't want to say that. I was some large amount of money.
Yeah, a lot of money it went through. But yeah, it just shows, doesn't it? So yeah, so there was that interesting thing, and I think one of the things that we've never hired someone with a lot of experience. There's people who've done things before. We've never hired someone with a lot of experience. And hiring Sam and Yaya, they both had no experience, I think. Yaya had worked in they had bits, didn't they? Like customer
bits, yeah,
stuff.
and Sam had done a bit of recruitment here, and Yaya had worked at like a. But they were sponges. They wanted to learn and they wanted to absorb it. And I think, as we grow now as well, I find the recruitment process one of the hardest. And that the guys see me, I come off an interview and I go no, and I'm so strict with it because it's just like culturally we've got a really good group of people that you'd meet and you go, they're some of the nicest people I'd ever meet. But typically in sales, you get people that are like, I'm gonna fucking shit on everyone. I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna be the god. Blah blah blah. Well, actually, the war's with yourself. I want to be better than I am this time next year, and it's like those kind of people are being the people that deliver. I don't want to bring someone in that's got that attitude of like what you'd expect in like a Wolf of Wall Street. It wouldn't wash with us. It's not our style. And I think as we grow, that's a harder thing as well. Obviously, one of the next people that we hired, we met at a mutual friend's birthday party, and she bounced up to us and was like, "What do you two do?" And we just thought, "You're brilliant. Do you want a job?" And she was at a point and it was all these kind of things it's just shaped this last year. And like you look back and you laugh, and it's like everything's fallen into place. What do you think? If I can ask you, what do you think the hardest thing has been this year? And how have you overcome it?
That's a good question. The hardest thing. I think I've always struggled with when you don't deliver. And often I think as we because now we still get on the phones and stuff, but as we're moving away, you're almost putting the keys in someone else's hands. And the business is still in its infancy, so it's a reflection of us. So when someone's struggling, or perhaps you have that day where you don't do well, I'm probably still a bit too attached to it in terms of that attachment to outcome, where I think, oh, but we're meant to be this business that's like different than the other agencies out there can get you a meeting with someone. But the feedback that we get that I really love is when people say, I've never worked with an agency who got us that, or got us in front of that person, or we had a great meeting with a CEO. We've never been able to sit down with a CEO before. So the days when it's the opposite way, and it hadn't worked, and it's a 0 day, and the client's like, "What happened today? How did what's going on?" But concerned, I've paid you up front. Those are probably the ones where I've taken it home. My commute's up to and from Bournemouth an hour both ways, so it's probably the bits where I've not listened to any music and sat in the car thinking, I need to think of ways to fix that. Does that resonate at all with you?
1,000,000%. One of our biggest clients, the first day was a shambles. I was on the phone. I was like, we need to make this work. There's a lot of potential here. I think it's a brilliant service. and the first day just wasn't working. And I think it's having that sense to just say, right, okay, just because it's not working now doesn't mean it's never going to work. Okay, what else can we try? And I remember, I don't think I slept that night, and I came back the next day and I was like, right, I've got something. I've been trialing. I've got 6 different openers, bang, 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 and then it started working, and it's grown, and we're still working with them. And I think it's one of those things. It's the easy thing when it comes to like prospecting and cold calling, attachment to outcome. There's none. I can confidently say that when I'm cold calling, I'm not. I can remove that attachment. I'm not asked. If I'm being honest, at points when it comes to clients and growth of clients and things like that, there are certain clients where I don't know if they sell you a dream or they're a big name, and it's like you get a bit attached to it, and it's like, but I think that's human. Obviously, I'd love to work with this big client that wants to grow with us and throw a load of money at us, but it's knowing that. And I think we're getting better at it. If it slips up, okay, cool, we move on from it. So we might be attached in the moment, but afterwards, we can disattach quite easily.
Yeah, and there's definitely a thing of we care so much. You put a lot of expectation on the people that you hire that you also need to care. But the reality is probably it means less to them if they don't hit that day. On that first day, those trial 4 days, if one of those is a blank and it's a dud, oh no, what's happened here? We're not going to get the renewal, but that probably means more to us than it does to the people that we hire. Probably a thing that a lot of leaders get wrong is just expecting people to care as much as you. I'm not saying we don't have a team of people that care, but they care the amount that they should care. They don't care in a sense of like their life depends on it. They care enough to come in and do the job and earn the money and get all the cultural benefits that we offer. And you know, me and you have never done any management before, so the management piece, from managing your own clients to managing a team of people, it's a massive learning curve, and it doesn't work how you think it would work. So maybe, I mean, you were managing people before I was. We grew Manchester first because I had a baby due in January. It made sense to not be rushing off to start something in Bournemouth straight away. But what were those early days of managing like, and how was that perhaps shaped where you are now?
I've had a lot of twat managers through the years, and I know that you have as well. And I look back and I can probably think of one manager that I had when I was maybe 23, 24, selling insurance in a call centre, and I really, really liked him. Really easy to get on with, really sound guy. But you also knew when the time was like, right, okay, now I need to have a difficult conversation with you, or now you need to pull your finger out and do the work. And luckily I respected him enough. So I kind of had this amalgamation of all these good bosses that I've had over the years. I want to be like them. And what did they do on a daily basis? The little things like on a Monday, what did you get up to on the weekend? And actually giving a shit and having that conversation, because it's making people feel valued about their lives and things like that. And this guy was one of the bosses that I think of. He knew everything. He'd go, "Oh, how's your Auntie Lorraine?" He'd remember, and it makes you value people. It's crazy how it works, and it's like obviously like how to win friends and influence people, that kind of thing. But just treating people, these are staff that we love, and we're not going to sit here and say we're one big family, because that's bullshit. Do you know what I mean? It's more of like we're a team and we can work together. I think the one word that's kind of been a bit of a motto that's rang true is just fair. And one of the guys, we went out for lunch on the last day of the year, and he said, the thing is with you is like you're always fair. So if you do have to have a difficult conversation, or you do have to kind of say, right, now is time to do this, or kind of pull someone up on something, because you're so fair along the way, when it's actually time to have that conversation, it doesn't feel difficult or awkward. And I think if you treat people like human beings, and you say, right, there's a job to get done, you've got to do the job. If you're doing the job, well, I'm not going to be on your back, I'm not going to be micromanaging you, I'm not going to be pushing you and whipping you to, do you know what I mean, do more and more and more. Get the job done.
Yeah, who knew? Treating people like human beings is the way to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had a lot of bad leaders, toxic leaders, people who were manipulative on the way. But yeah, probably the same. One good leader that I thought I'm going to try and put some of that into here. I need someone I'm still friends with now. But it's definitely a totally different skill set. And I think the thing that I didn't realise was how nuanced it was across the board. So the way say we hired 2 people to start off with, you would have to manage them both totally differently. You couldn't just blanket approach the same management applies to both of them, because it doesn't. It's totally different. And a question that I've started asking now when I interview people is, when I have to have a difficult conversation with you, how would you like that to be communicated? Because the answer is different for everyone. There's people in my office who they like just direct, tough love, and there's people who want it a bit more nurturingly. So you have to give it the positive, the constructiveness, and then the positive again. So it's knowing communication. As we know in sales, you have to apply it differently to different personality types, and it's the same internally with your own team. So, okay, so we hired again. There was some growth in that account that we're talking about there. And then you also had your own accounts that you were looking after as well. So you were split between, you were almost like an SDR and then also a manager looking after an office and growing a team there. And then I think around then, did we start Bournemouth before that client came on and did the big renewal?
It's a good question, mate. All these days seem to have merged into one. Yeah, I think so, because, yeah, I remember your first hire in Bournemouth. It was a decision between Gert and Jesus, if you remember. We interviewed a guy called Gert and a guy called Jesus. I remember the interview with Gert. I was just like, I think you're brilliant, straight away. Top guy, really liked you. Thought, yeah. And you were like, I think there's something here. And he's proved that along the way as well. Very loyal, very committed.
Yeah, he's a very, very important first hire for me. Incredibly, incredibly loyal to the business, and been a sponge. I mean, my only concern with him was he'd run his own business before. Very, very ambitious, entrepreneurial young lad. He'd run his own business in the plumbing and heating space. And my main reservation that I shared with him, and that we still laugh about now, is I didn't think he'd be easy to manage, I was totally wrong. He's very easy to manage and very low maintenance guy. He's now team leader in Bournemouth. But when we started off, we had a little office, 2-person office. So it was me, Gert, and my dog. Jesus didn't get the job. Sorry, Jesus. Although I thought it would have been great when you were cold calling or getting for a gatekeeper. Who is it? It's Jesus. So we were in there, and I was running him through the approach and how it would work. And I remember about halfway through the training, he said, "I don't believe that'd work." I thought, good lad, challenging me. It's like, okay, I'll do a call then. So I put my mobile phone on speaker, called this guy, first call. It's happened to both of us, this. It doesn't always happen, does it? But you ring someone first time, first connect, booked a meeting with this guy, put the phone down, feeling all smug about myself, and he went, "Fuck off, that was one of your mates." I promised it, I assured him it wasn't. He got on the phones that afternoon, went home, sent me this text saying, I think I can be loads better than that. I'm really sorry. Shows the kind of guy he is, very self-aware, wanting to be really good, wanting to be the best. And he came in the next day, 2 meetings, and had the same moment that you had of, oh, right, okay, it works.
It works. So,
and I think he was one of the guys that got it quickest. Like, in terms of got it to work quickest. Like, he was delivering quite quick. Yeah.
He's always been we call him the milkman, don't we?
He always delivers.
He always delivers. So what do you think it's probably a hard question, but what do you think is the biggest reason? So if we look back and you say, right, I've got these things on this whiteboard that I want to achieve, and we look back a year later and we've achieved them and then some, what do you think has been integral to the success of We Have a Meeting?
It's a good point. I think that knowing why you're doing something, like almost hitting a sustainable output of, if I do these things, this happens. So there's a sustainable output of, this client wants this result. So here's the output that we need to put in to get that, and having a really scientific understanding of that across the board. And obviously we've put things in place to make that even easier. But then if you can do that, you can just replicate that for other people, and everyone will have their own formula. So it might take one person 10 conversations, it might take another person 20. But as long as you understand that, it's less about, let's just do blind cold calls and blind sales output and just hope for the best. You can actually help to keep people motivated by being, we only need to speak to 10 people to make this work. And then lo and behold, we speak to 10 people, you book your meeting, there we go, jobs are good. And so I think it's having that real scientific approach and not treating it as a, let's get up and just sprint mindlessly every day. Let's actually have some meat on the bone. Communication, I think, has been key. We've always been, across the board, me and you, we've always had open dialogue about things are working well, things aren't working well, here's what needs to be changed, we've hired this person, they're not right, we've hired this person, they're great, how do we make them better? So communication and that transparency across the board to have those tough conversations. But I do think, if we're honest, and me and you've spoke about this before, we would probably get rid of people a lot quicker now than we would when we started off.
Yeah, you probably see the warning signs a little bit more, but that's like everything, it's evidence, and we're learning as we're going on, and you can probably see things that are happening earlier because you're seeing the signs again. It's like, right, well, that's following that path. It's very interesting to look back at a year again. I think around October, November, December time, I get nostalgic because it's like, this time last year it was like a, is it gonna work? And I've really, really been very aware to take it in, because I know that this time next year it's not going to be like, oh, I look back a year and where was we? It will grow more and more, but that first, is it going to work? It's like the early days of when you're dating someone. At the time, it might not feel like, but it's like, really make the most of this, because it's going to feel like something, and that's going to be like your nostalgia and sitting in that phone booth. And I think about those conversations that we had with friends, and they were like, are you sure? Is it going to ruin the friendship? Is there going to be any tiffs and stuff like that? And it's something we've spoken about on LinkedIn before. I honestly can't imagine doing this with somebody that isn't a friend. I know that we brought in Ben now, who's an ops director, and he's one of our best friends from childhood as well. But why do you think working with friends has had such a positive effect rather than a negative effect? Because there'd probably be an argument for both.
Yeah. I think you made a really good point there on the like having a relationship with a partner. A lot of relationships go wrong because, why aren't you together anymore? We just couldn't agree on anything. Okay, so, or we just weren't communicating. That's really what they were saying. But we'd had this conversation. There's a voice note on my phone still that you sent me. I think we sent one to each other of, play this on maybe the days when we're not getting on as well. But we had a really big kind of preemptive chat. Same with Ben. Ben joined, and Ben brought up himself of, here's the kind of ground rules. So here's where the friendship is, here's where the business relationship is, and here's kind of where they meet. But if we want to have a tough conversation, here's how we're going to approach it. If we don't agree, here's how we're going to approach it. Here's things that are just a democracy. We've got 3 people, 2 people agree, 1 person doesn't. There we go. There's kind of no hard feelings to it. So I think the communication, but really importantly, the kind of the preemptive communication. So not just getting there and being like, let's just muddy through this. Understanding, if we get here, how are we going to talk about it? And if we get here, how are we going to talk about it? And we've got this relationship that we've talked about with our own team of understanding we don't get too high on the wins, we don't get too low on the losses, because those don't really matter. It's just, if you do the steps, there'll be wins and losses, but you'll just get there.
Yeah.
And the mantra that we've always had is, doesn't really matter, we'll make it work. We've always said it, we've probably not always known how, but we'll always make it work. So that communication piece sounds so obvious, but I think so many people don't do it. And I know all these bad leaders that I've had never did it with me. and when I've been sacked from a job and been scratching my head thinking, why didn't I know that I was about to get sacked? And you start play like, am I really not self-aware? Well, no, it's not that. It's that things aren't being communicated properly. So yeah, I think that answers your question. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. No, 1,000,000%.
Let me ask you one. So we've got obviously a shared group of friends. We know each other's families.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any stories that people were telling you that you were buying into of this is probably going to happen when you start working with your friend or when you start building a business?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think people thought we'd clash because we very rarely clashed throughout the years. There was one time in Kavos when you were playing that mandolin while you were trying to sleep and you smashed it over my head, I think.
I didn't smash
I remember it differently to you. I think people were just a bit more like, yeah, what if you clash and what happens? I think they were focusing on the what happens if it doesn't work. And you've got to, I get that. You've got to be, there's risks in life, okay? And you've got to really like listen to, but when your gut's telling you one thing and it's like, yeah, okay, what happens if it doesn't work? But I think we're mature enough to say, I think this was the thing. We know each other inside out. We know each other. I think you knew that if you hired me and it didn't work, it wouldn't be through laziness. It wouldn't be through, oh, he's not sat there cold calling. Like, I think you knew that you could trust me with the work ethic and things like that. And I think that I trusted you enough that it was like, we had that conversation of, okay, I'll give it a year, and it's very honest and open, and if it works, it works. And you also said, if the time comes where you want a bit more, and you want to join in, and you want a bigger slice of the pie, like you're testing the waters at the moment, you can have that. And everything that kind of, we say this with the team, that one of the things they praise us on is everything you say you're going to do, you do. Like, so we're not going to say we're going to do this, this, and this, but if we say we're going to do it, then it happens. And I think that's a lot of things that don't happen in business. And I think we've said it, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then it happens. And you said that, and I remember the call, I gave you a call one time, and I said, listen, I'm ready. Daddy, I'm ready. I couldn't imagine my life now not doing this. And it's funny how life takes you on like a bit of a journey. And I think it's like one of those things that I'm so committed to, and I'm so excited for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, wherever it goes. I know we've got big plans and things like that, but it was just like, right, okay, now it's a case of we can really the foundations are being laid. We can really build on this now, and now we've got a bigger team. We're going into the new year and we've got everything prepared and set up. It's like, let's run at it again. Imagine. And I think it's the big thing. It's like, people say, imagine, you see all these like motivational Instagram or TikTok videos, but imagine if you just gave yourself 1 year where you committed and you worked your arse off. And I think we can both say that this last year was that year, and we can have honest conversations. There was probably moments where you've called me and been like, are you alright? Like, I'm worried about burnout and things like that, because my attitude sometimes is a bit more like, I'm going to fucking go for this. I'm going to just sprint at it. And I think moving into the next year, it's like being a bit more aware of balance. But a lot of that work that was done in the first year is set up for us to be able to do that in year two.
Yeah.
And I think it's like not to be afraid of hard work and not to expect everything in a day. But like looking back from me joining you on the 4th of January, 2 people, we're just going to cold call on our mobiles in a co-working space and get bullied by people, to the end of December, a team of 15, the process is in place, a list of clients in the wings waiting. Do you know what I mean? And we've just, I think another nice full circle moment. We had a conversation probably around this time, just getting ready for it. We were launching the podcast and we said, do you think we'd be able to get Benjamin Dennehy on the podcast? Because we had a lot of love for him and his style of selling and his personality. And then last month, we did a paid event with Benjamin Dennehy for 30 people. And it's just like, that really has come from like, do the small things, do the phone calls, post on LinkedIn, do the small things consistently, because that's what's going to build up for the bigger things. Don't just try and go out and do one big thing. You've got to be consistent with it, and once you're consistent with it, you'll see minimal growth, but minimal growth in the space of a year could be crazy.
Yeah, it's mad what's been possible, and also the just belief, kind of like raw belief, moments of just this is just going to work. I don't know why, don't know if I could tell you why, but I know that we're doing these steps, things are happening, and it's going to work. And I know other people would be. I don't think me and you have opened an Excel spreadsheet. That's what Ben's here for. But I know a lot of people would sit there before they started a business with the Excel spreadsheet open, putting the formula in, trying to get things to 100%. But what we've learned is it's not about getting to 100%. It's probably about getting to about 30% and being like, let's just go now. Let's just actually do the work and just prove it in the concept, because this isn't waiting around. Businesses aren't just waiting around to solve this problem. They want an answer, they want it solved, and they want to know if you can do it. So a lot of the early portion's been that. And, just, I suppose, flashing forward, we're talking a lot about that one big client. We've got 2 of those now that are full-time clients that work with us with multiple people. We've got a few that are half a week clients. So, we work in days as a business. And then we've still got those smaller businesses. Some of those have been with us since day one, who work with us 1 day a week. So we've got a real spread of industry, sectors, personality types that we're pitching to. And I think just looking at it from the top of the tower, you've got to give yourself a bit of a pat on the back that we've made that work and it's happened. And there's a massive list of clients on both our boards that we're working with, and a massive list of people that are waiting in the wings to get started. And a lot of those are nice now because it's based on referrals. I've heard good things about you. So yeah, it's been really great, and thanks for coming along for the ride, mate. Who knew that someone so non-committal would be sat here looking ahead to next year? So I don't know if you want to, how crass you want to be with this, but what this time next year, if we've made this a bit of a tradition and we're sat here this time next year talking about the same things, the same journey, the team, recruitment, skill set, clients, mindset, what do you think we'll be saying this time next year? What do you hope we're saying?
I would like to be at a position where we grow and the business is growing and booming, and we're sat there with like a bigger offices, but both along the board, 30 employees, maybe more. Like obviously we 2 times it and a half, so let's see where we are this year. I think another big thing that we found is kind of our style of selling. Not everyone's doing it, but once they start, we've got people that work for Zoom Info in America. They're like, oh, we use that pattern interrupt. Now everything's a remix. We've got it from somewhere. We've taken, I like this from this person, and we've kind of made an amalgamation of our favourite kind of our style, which you would call the Wham style. Do you know what I mean? Everything's a remix. And I think part of our plan and part of our growth is we want to continue to kind of help other people, that help the other sales reps, so people that are coming through that might not know, because we've been there, we've been 21, ended up in a shitty sales job and having no support. Well, if we can offer that support in content form or whatever, I think there's going to be a real change in the sales industry, and you're going to see a lot of the weaker salespeople exposed as time goes on, and the stronger will survive. And I think there's a lot to do for the sales industry, especially. And I think we have company goals, we have individual goals, and I think I'm just very excited for this next year. Like, it feels like everything's in place, and it feels like this is the year to really build on it. By the end of the year, I'm not saying that we're not there yet, but imagine if we are saying, right, it's just foundations, the slates are laid. By the end of the next year, there'll be a house with walls and windows. And then year 3, we're going to get a bloody chaise longue in there. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
But yeah, I think just looking back, it's been crazy. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that we could offer to anyone doing it is like, I think it's like that. When you're working for yourself, you have this muscle in your brain that says no one else is going to come along and give me the answer. So we can have conversations, but it's that problem solving. I think in business, that is the biggest skill that you can get, is like to think on your own 2 feet. When I was in a business, I'd be like, I don't know how to do this, and go and ask a manager or something like that. Whereas that was making me like act like, if you start thinking of things like your own business, and you start like, anything that comes at me, I'm gonna just think about how to solve this problem. I think that's the big key. And if you can do that, even if you are employed, and you can problem solve, and you can start thinking for yourself, that's when you start to see dramatic change.
Yeah, great point. I think that ability to solve problems yourself is often one that leaders can show their team in quite a simple question. So we might get someone in our team coming and asking us something, and being able to just say, well, what do you think? Rather than having that ego like, oh, you want to know, you want me to correct you and show you how great I am. Actually taking a step back and saying, well, what do you think? And often people know the answer. They just want someone to kind of validate that they're thinking in the right lines. So your job is to enable people to be the best version of themselves that they can be, not to be like, oh, I want you to be a cardboard cutout of me, because that's never going to work. It's never going to make people feel valued. I've actually got on my board here some goals that I wrote down before the financial year started, and some of them are actually already hit. So it's quite interesting to look at this already. I'm going to leave this here, and then maybe we'll do one at the end of the financial year, and I'll hold it up and we can discuss which ones we hit and which ones we didn't. But see, I just noticed one then that it's the third one down, and it's already happened. So I've not even looked at it since I wrote it down. So look, mate, I want to wrap things up. There's obviously more we could talk about in terms of what we hired, how we built the team, but we've got big plans this year for content. We're going to be pumping stuff out on YouTube. We've got some ideas for vlogs, diaries, things that we're going to put out in terms of teaching people some of the skill bits, some of the mindset bits that we want to do. There's a lot that we're working on in the background. I think content's going to be a real key part of next year. But from my standpoint, I just want to say a big thank you to you, mate. I don't know if I could have done it without you. I think the support as my friend, as well as my business partner, you've really got that really nice balance for someone who's kind of giving me emotional support and being someone to kind of vent to, and also someone to give me the practical advice on either management or should we take on this client or not, or this client is happy and wants to grow, this client's less happy and wants to down, those different conversations that we've had. There's never been a moment where I've gone off in a huff because you didn't hear me or understand me. So just a big thank you to you, Matt. I definitely couldn't have done it without you.
And thank you for talking me out of it and talking me into it. And here I am. And they're probably some of my favourite parts of the day. I've said it to you before, but in what normal world, you're a father of 4 children, you know what I mean, and you're running a business. In what normal world would you be able to speak to your best friend constantly throughout the day on WhatsApp and messages here and there and Teams and things like that, but also to just jump on the phone? And I think I think this is why it works, because if you listen to an hour-long conversation, it would intertwine with, this is what this client's saying, this is how I'm managing today, this is some of the fires that I'm putting out, so also this is what happened last night while I was watching TV, and this is what I had for dinner, and this is what I'm doing at the gym at the moment, and back to this is what, and it's just like, it becomes like, it's so not processed, it's just like that friendship and business line. Maybe we should do more business conversations throughout the next year rather than but do you know what I mean? It just makes it feel like we were talking, we jumped on the phone yesterday. You'd think we'd run out of things to say at this point, but we were on the phone for an hour and a half yesterday, and it went from everything to planned for the year to also like self-awareness and like just analysing others' behaviour and things like that. And it's just great to always put the world to rights with you, and it wouldn't be this without me and you. So thank you for the journey so far, and let's see what 2023 brings. I was looking earlier. I sent you a text saying 2022 could be the best year of our lives. I agree, best year of my life by far, 1,000,000%. I said 2023's got to be good to top it.
It's got a lot to live up to, but I think we'll be in a year's time, looking older, but certainly feeling a bit wiser as well. So yeah, I'm fired up, mate. But right, well, look, it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed. It's been quite cathartic, actually. I feel quite level-headed now, moving into the.
Yeah,
we should do this
might go
more
and
often.
smoke a cigar now.
Yeah, exactly.
Happy New Year.
But yeah, for everyone listening, there'll be things going out daily, so keep an eye out. Maybe let us know if you want to see anything in particular. I know I've had messages about trench tips that we were putting out, messages about certain guests that we had on. Literally tell us anything that you want. We'll work on it within reason. Not anything.
Always.
I'm keeping my clothes on.
Have
a good one.
The year of nudity. Thank you. See you later, Zach.